Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, you are audible. Yes, all the participants are requested to please turn on their camera.
Yes, sir.
Are all the participants of Team 511 has joined us?
Sir, our researcher is facing a slight technical glitch. She will be with us in a minute.
All the participants are requested to please turn on their cameras. Ishmeet Kaur Saluja ji, please turn on your. Thank you. The honorable judges are requested to please turn on their cameras. We are about to start the session. A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Adhivakta Parishad High Court Unit, we are pleased to welcome all of you. Let me introduce to all of you the judges of today's competition. The first judge is Shri Krishan Kumar ji. He has over 18 years of practice, especially in criminal matters. He is a panel counsel for Madhya Pradesh Financial Corporation and IFCO Tokyo General Insurance. Further, he is a member of Legal Aid Service Committee at Delhi High Court. We are extremely delighted to have such renowned lawyer who is using his advocacy skills to serve the society. The second judge is Shri Himanshu Pathak. He has over 10 years of experience in civil, commercial, and criminal litigation in Delhi High Court and district courts. He is a senior arbitration panel counsel and government pleader for central government at Delhi High Court. And along with he holds panel of SDMC at Delhi High Court. Further, he is panel counsel for State of Madhya Pradesh at Supreme Court of India. He is he has attained remarkable success because of the hard work and values that was developed during his law schools. He backed many awards and medals in debates, competition, client counseling, and legal drafting competition. We hopefully appreciate you for finding the time to be with us despite your tight schedule. My name is Rajat Gaur and I'll be the court master for today's competition. Uh, the teams are required to please tell their time strategies. Each speaker has maximum of 20 minutes uh, and they are required to notify the diversion of their time. 5 minutes will be given to the rebuttal.
Since there is no opposition team over here, can we remove the timing for rejoinders?
No, you have to argue
As per the
a-
previous rules.
as per the previous rules.
Yes, sir, I understand that, but part of speaker timing was reserved for rejoinders. But since there is no opposition team, shall we just assume speaker timings?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. So then, in that regard, speaker one will be speaking for 13 minutes, 14 minutes,
Okay,
and speaker two will be speaking for 16 minutes.
okay. You can start.
Greetings to the bench. If it may please this honorable court, this is the counsel. This is the counsel appearing on behalf of the respondent in the case of State versus Samir and others. The counsel would like to refer to the bench as your lordship.
Please, you carry forward.
Much obliged, your lordship. Now moving to the statement of facts. Samir and Monu were detained by the special cell of the Delhi police. They were coming from the Farakka Express train wherein they were searched, and on examination, the police found the involvement with Kalu Mama and two other accused, Peter and Sohail. They were carrying 250 fake currency notes with had the face value of 5 lakhs each. The charge sheet in furtherance contained the confessions of the three accused, which demonstrated that Kalu Mama collected the fake currency notes from Sohail for sending it to Pulwama through Samir and Monu, where it had also to be collected by Peter to carry out bomb blasts on the convoy of Indian Army. They have relied upon evidence of call records, geographical mapping, and witnesses who saw the co-accused Sohail and Kalu together in public spaces. Now, the three accused, Samir, Monu, and Kalu Mama, have been held liable under Section 120B, 498B, 489C, and Section 121, Section 123, and Section 201 of IPC, and under Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of UAPA. Now, moving to the statement of jurisdiction, the Honorable Court has jurisdiction to entertain the instant matter under Section 26 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and under Section 13 of NIA Act 2008. It is now, if your lordship permits, the council shall move to the issues at hand.
Please.
Much obliged, your lordship. It is contended that Monu, Samir, Kalu are not liable under section 489B, 489C of IPC, and the second contention being that they are also not liable under section 17 of UAPA. Moving to the first contention at hand, which deals with the offences of Monu and Samir, whether or not they are liable under section 489B and C and section 17 of UAPA. Initiating with the value of confession, which is under section 25 of the Indian Evidence Act, it lays down that a confession which is made by a person to the police officer is inadmissible and cannot be proven. The basic objective behind this section and section 26 of the Indian Evidence Act is to prevent the practices of torture or police atrocities for the purpose of extracting confessions from the accused person. Now, in the present case, the confessions which were made by Monu, Samir, and Kalu will not hold true, as these have been made in the police custody and also under Article 20, Subclause 3 of the Indian Constitution. A person cannot be forced to be a witness against his own self. This is the rule regarding self incrimination. Now, moving ahead to section 489B, what it essentially highlights is that when a person, whoever sells or buys, and for that matter receives from any other person, or also otherwise traffics or uses as genuine any forged or counterfeit currency with the prior knowledge or has a reason to believe the said notes are forged or counterfeit, is said to have committed the offense. Now, moving to section 489C, it talks about that whoever in his possession has fake Indian currency notes and also has a reason to believe the same in the first place that they are counterfeit and uses it thereby as genuine is liable under this section. The essentials of these two sections, 489B and 489C, being the mens rea on part of the accused. So here, mens rea refers to the knowledge or having reason to believe as appearing in the language of section 489C of IPC, which essentially makes it obligatory on part of the prosecution to establish mens rea in the very first place. Since there is no evidence that the respondent had sold or, for that matter, used any counterfeit notes, however, they had possession of it. They had mere possession of it. Now, in the case of Uma Shankar versus State of Chhattisgarh, the Supreme Court has already held that under Section 489B and 489C, it is necessary to prove the mens rea, and there should be a reasonable, beyond reasonable doubt, that the people who were traveling with the fake currency notes were actually having the knowledge that it was counterfeit. Now, also in the case of Karuna Karan Nair versus State of Kerala, it has held that mere possession of forged notes is not sufficient to constitute offense, and it has also been further held in the case of Roni Dubey versus State of West Bengal. Now, moving ahead to the fact that mere possession is not enough, as it was not backed by sufficient knowledge, intention, or evidence on behalf of the accused. Since Samir, Monu, and Kalu Mama had been working on awareness and sensitization for the oppressed classes, they were regularly engaged in the fundraising activities, and they had no reason at all to believe that the notes which they were carrying were fake Indian currency notes, as it has also held that recovery of fake Indian currency notes took place from the custody of respondents in a mysterious circumstance. So the benefit of doubt should be given to them, as the majority of the ingredients.
Before that, please let me know कि what evidence you have laid before the court to prove the fact that you do not have the knowledge that the bag contains the counterfeit notes. What evidence do you have laid?
So, sir, section 489B and C has essentials containing mens rea. So, since they do not have mens rea on the very part, so they did not have prior knowledge.
In order to prove that you do not have the mens rea, what evidence do you have laid? Apart from the statement made under section 161 of the CRPC, what else evidence you have laid before the court to prove that you do not have the knowledge of the fact that your bag contains the counterfeit currency notes?
Sir, essentially, so a person is innocent until proven guilty. So it's on the behalf of the prosecution to prove the same. Also, in the call record details, which is in the charge sheet.
But the thing is that
burden goes on you, whether it was a conscious possession or not. You have to prove.
Yes, sir.
You understand the difference between the burden of proof and the onus of the proof. The burden of the proof is on prosecution, no doubt. But once the prosecution establishes the prima facie case against you that you have the possession of the counterfeit coin, counterfeit currency, thereafter the onus shifted on you. And in order to discharge your liability that you do not have the knowledge, what evidence do you have laid?
So, sir, in the charge sheet, there's the call records details, which has been put up after the investigation. So, the subsection 18 talks about the charges. So, thereupon, it has been clearly stated that Samir and
the call records are going against you.
So, sir, it clearly states that Samir and Monu were not in contact of Sohail, who is the conspirator here in this case. So, they are not in contact with Sohail. The call record states that.
Please show me.
Okay, sir. Do I share it through the chat box? Your Lordship, do I share it through the chat box?
Please refer the page number of your memorial where you have said so.
Sir, it's essentially 18, subsection 18, wherein the charges I have mentioned, paragraph 17.16.
Of page number?
So page number 44, I guess.
Of page number 44.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, proceed.
So, sir, here since there's just mere possession, so it is submitted that Samir and Monu are not liable under section 489B and C of IPC. Now, moving ahead to the liability of under section 17 of UAPA, which deals with the punishment for raising funds for terrorist activities. According to it, whoever in India or in a foreign country directly or indirectly raises or collect funds or provide funds for the purpose of terrorist activities or thereby helps in conducting terrorist activities by raising funds is liable under this section. According to this section, the essentials involved are knowingly involved in activities which are associated with raising funds for terrorist activities and knowingly attempting to provide funds for the benefit of terrorist organization. So Monu and Sami do not fulfill these two criteria as they were not in touch with Sohail as per the call details, and also the essentials were not fulfilled by them as they did not have the knowledge about the contents of the bag and thereby its usage. The very fact that he was connected with others was because of the sensitization purpose. So the council now
So you mean to say that the mere statement of the accused made under 161 is the direct and substantial evidence to establish the fact that you do not have the mens rea. That's what you want to say.
So, sir, the call records also substantiate their statement, so it is acting as a corroborative evidence.
Okay.
So, the council seeks permission to move to deal with the liability of Kalu Mama.
Go ahead, please.
So now, as we see in the present case, uh, as it has been stated from the contentions regarding the value of confession, so under sections 25 and 26 of the Indian Evidence Act, along with the prohibition of self-incrimination, as per the rules which are also given in Article 20, subclause 3 of the Constitution of India, that a person cannot be forced to give a statement against his own self as self-incrimination is prohibited. So, in the same purpose, Kalu Mama statements, or for that matter, the statement of Samir and Monu will not be used to hold him liable. So now also, since there was no corroborative evidence which was thereby found that Kalu Mama was involved, so it is submitted that Kalu Mama cannot.
No. Please appreciate that after making the disclosure statement of Samir and Monu, recovery were made against him. So what you have to say regarding that? It is not a mere confessional statement that you are trying to project before the court. It is a statement after that recovery has been made by the police, and it is admissible under the Indian Evidence Act.
Your Lordship, the facts of the case states that in the charge sheet as well, the fake Indian currency notes were recovered from the possession of Samir and Mono and not Kalu Mama. So hereupon, so the statements are not held to be admissible as per the sections 25 and section 26 of the Indian Evidence Act. And also about the statement of Kalu Mama, it is not admissible as per Article 20, subclause 3 of the Constitution of India, which prohibits self-incriminating statements. So now moving to the contention regarding offense of Kalu Mama under Section 17 of UAPA. Sohail was the conspirator, and he was the main person who was also in contact with Lashkar-e-Taiba. So here the common intention, which is referred as a pre-planned, according to which activities are executed in order to obtain a desired plan. Now, it's essential to understand the meaning and significance of the term accomplice. So, accomplice is essentially anyone who has taken part in the commission of the crime and had prior or entire knowledge about it. So, in the Indian Evidence Act, even though it has not been defined what an accomplice is, but it has been established by Supreme Court in the various judgments, including Jagannath versus Imperer, wherein it has been stated an accomplice is a person who had the entire knowledge and thereby supports in the commission of the crime. So here the essentials of the accomplice being that he was an integral part of the crime and had proper knowledge was not fulfilled by Kalu Mama as he was unaware about relation of Sohail with Lashkar-e-Taiba. So Kalu Mama did not fulfill the essentials of the purpose. So hereupon, what he was essentially doing was he was in contact with Sohail for the purpose of sensitizing people, as he was the leader of People's Union, wherein he was also working for their rights. So Kalu Mama, along with Sohail, along with Monu and Sameer, were working for sensitization people and for upholding the rights of the people. So hereupon it is submitted that Kalu Mama is not liable under section 489B, 489C and section 17 of UAPA.
Okay.
If your lordship has no further question, the council would like seek permission to call on upon the co-council.
Yeah, please, you may.
Greetings, Your Lordship. The Council seeks permission to proceed with the following issues. There will be primarily three issues. First is of the criminal conspiracy charges. Second is of the terrorist activities and waging of war charges. And thirdly is with reference to concealment and disappearance of evidence. Before the Council proceeds with these arguments, a few submissions to be made before the court is that the evidence of absence of knowledge or intention comes out of the fact that under Exhibit 7, that we received, which gives the statement of defense witnesses, we understand that the accused, namely Sameer, Monu, and Kalu Mama, have been indulged in activities of raising funds, awareness, skill development. This can be found in the last 3 pages with reference to the statements of defense witnesses, right? So, since we understand that the accused have claimed that their activities were constantly of a nature where they were raising funds and raising awareness, it is not a reasonable burden to place on the accused to expect them to know that it was high quality fake Indian currency, particularly when we inspect this in light of the fact that even the police had to send these notes to another organization to confirm that this is fake Indian currency. Therefore, the burden of proof thus again lies on prosecution to prove that the knowledge and intent existed, since the prima facie case still presents innocence on behalf of the accused. Now, moving forth to the first issue of criminal conspiracy. Criminal conspiracy has been defined under section 120A of the IPC as 2 or more persons agreeing to do or causing to do an illegal act. At this, we will examine 2 elements. The first one is the action or an illegal act, and the second one is the agreement between the accused to do so. As it has been proven, if the illegal act in question is of counterfeit currency circulation or possession, my co-counsel has proved to you that they cannot be held for circulation or production, since there is no proof in that regard, and also they cannot be held liable for possession of it based on the case law cited and authorities cited, right? So since that illegal act has not been committed, there's not conclusive proof to conclude the commission of that act, we can move on to the fact that there was no agreement in that case either. And in the absence of agreement, a case for criminal conspiracy cannot be proven. The agreement did not occur due to a threefold argument. The first argument is that confessions were inadmissible. Therefore, any confessions that were given in the charge sheet cannot be taken against the accused, as according to Section 25 of the Evidence Act. The second is that circumstantial evidence is inconclusive. The circumstantial evidence in question is firstly the geographical meetings that the witnesses have cited of having shown the accused together. That is inadmissible, or even if it is admissible, it is not conclusive proof, as just the citing of a meeting is not proof of the nature of the meeting. Therefore, even if the meeting had occurred, you cannot use that to prove the intent or the common agreement between the parties. The second evidence that prosecution presents is of the call detail records. And the call detail records, again, are not proof of the nature of the association. They are only proof of the association. And as was held in Subramaniam Swamy versus A. Raja, call detail records and meetings cannot be used as proof of nature of association or to prove agreement. And thus, presenting the fact that an illegal act has not been performed by the accused, there was no agreement, considering confessions are inadmissible.
Before that, kindly have the statement of Mr. Sameer.
Yes, sir.
DW1.
Yes, sir.
Kindly have it. That is statement made under section 161 CRPC. And
Yes, sir.
read the last three lines.
As and when the train reached Old Delhi Railway Police Station, arrest me and Monu. We didn't do anything wrong. And after saw many policemen and I felt unconscious.
No, last three lines of the statement of the Samir.
One day, Kalu Mama told us about one project in which we needed to carry a bag to a place to another and hand it over to Peter. Monu and I didn't know that we were carrying fake currency notes.
Here the statement is to the effect that Mr. Samir knows Kalu,
Yes,
as
sir.
well as he came with the contact to Mr. Peter also. So if I am considering this fact that though you do not have the intention, but the prosecution is establishing the fact that there is an interconnection between all the accused person, whether you are denying this fact or not,
Yes, so there is an interconnection.
there is an interconnection. Now the issue rests is only with respect to the mens rea.
Yes, sir.
It is the admitted fact that the counterfeit currency note has been recovered from you.
Yes,
It
sir.
is the admitted fact that all the accused person are in connection with each other. Now the only question rests is what is the intention, what is the particular instance for which they are doing so. You are alleging that you are doing a project which is somewhat against the government. This fact is also admitted by you.
No, so these are not activities against the government in any way that is criminalized by the IPC or the laws of India. This is simply exercising the constitutional and fundamental right to dissent and the right to assembly and association. So this is while there is an interaction, there is no such criminal or anti-government interaction.
So I mean to say that ki what particular evidence you
Yes, sir.
want to show before the court that you people, you all the accused person does not have the mens rea to that effect. That's
Yes, sir.
simply I want to know.
Yes, sir. So there are primarily two. The first one is the statement of the accused themselves and the admissibility of the
And
statement.
what is the loophole of the prosecution? Please point out also. What
So
is the loophole in the FIR? What is the loophole in the investigation report that ultimately benefiting you people?
So there are several, but with regard to criminal conspiracy particularly, which is the issue at hand, the first loophole is that they're equating possession of fake Indian currency notes to the crimes under Section 489B and 489C, as has been proven by my co-counsel. Possession cannot be equated to criminal to the actus reus and mens rea, and thus the crime of counterfeit currency in terms of its production, circulation, smuggling, so on and so forth. So that is the first loophole that exists. The second loophole that exists is that the FIR and charge sheet equate the call detail records and the meetings to a proven association of criminal intent, which is not the case, and our judgments have proven in the past that to prove that criminal association requires the burden of proof on the prosecution. With reference to the onus of proof that lies on the respondents when we claim that there was no knowledge or intent, we present to you that past activities have always involved the nature of funds, of creating awareness, and of such interaction. If your lordship is pleased with those arguments, the council seeks to proceed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Lordship. Thus, in conclusion of the criminal conspiracy argument, since the illegal act in question did not occur, agreement does not occur, there is inconclusive proof of agreement. We lastly rely on the judgments of NCT versus Navjot Sandhu or Hardev Singh, where it was said that loose tangents of proof that do not build a cogent picture cannot be taken as conclusive evidence against the accused. And for these reasons, the accused, being Samir, Monu, and Kalu Mama, are not liable under criminal conspiracy as defined by Section 120A and punished by Section 120B and 18 of UAPA. Now, the Council would like to proceed to the next issue, which is of terrorist activities. The sections in question are defined by Section 15 of UAPA, punished by Section 16, Section 121 of IPC, which criminalizes the waging of war, and Section 20, which criminalizes and punishes the membership of organizations. The first sub-issue, with reference to terrorist activities as defined by Section 15, we are namely looking at two subsections. Section 15, subsection 3A, which criminalizes the damage to monetary stability. And at this point, the facts that are presented before the court is primarily Samir and Monu were only in possession of the currency. possession has not been written in the statutory clause as something that can damage the monetary stability. The things that have been mentioned are circulation, production, and smuggling. Since possession is not listed under the statutory provisions, Sameer and Monu cannot be held guilty for section 15 subsection 3A. Kalu Mama, there is no proof of production, there is no proof of smuggling, there was no even possession with Kalu Mama, and therefore section 15 sub clause 3A does not stand to them. Furthermore, even if it were to be argued that they did have counterfeit currency in their possession, the quantum of the counterfeit currency does not damage the monetary stability of India, because this section places a threshold and that threshold is not met. The second subsection is a subsection 4, which talks about damage to property of government of India, which may be pleaded in case of the Sohail's conspiracy to attack the Indian army convoy. But since there is no proof of association, there's no proof of association with the call detail records, there's no proof of association of the meeting with Sameer and Monu with Sohail, they cannot be held liable for any activities that they have not even intended with or furthered for Sohail's plan. Therefore, they are not liable for the acts defined under section 15 of the UAPA and not liable under section 16 of UAPA for punishment of these acts. Based on this absence of terrorist activities, we move to section 121 of IPC, which criminalizes the waging of war against the government of India. It criminalizes all three stages: attempt, abetment, and commission. Again, it is presented before the court that there was no terrorist activity committed by the three accused, as has been previously proven. There was no criminal conspiracy committed by the three accused, as has been previously proven. And again, we rely on Exhibit 7, which is the statement of the defense witnesses and their surrounding activities, which shows that their only intent was of raising funds, awareness, and skill development. And therefore, they have not done any act of waging a war against the government of India, nor have they displayed any intent or knowledge of waging a war against the government of India, and therefore they cannot be held liable under this section. The last section under this issue is section 20 of IPC, which is punishment for membership of terrorist organizations. Here as well, the first point is that there is inconclusive proof of the...
But before that, let me know, how will you disregard the statement made by the Iqbal Khan, the common friend of Sameer and Monu? He has made a statement to the effect that these people were intolerant about our country. So how will you disregard that particular statement of the witness? Because the prosecution has proved the statement of that particular witness.
Sir, intolerance towards country is first of all a rhetoric which by in the interest of justice and equity should not be used as conclusive proof of guilt in charges that are as high and as important as these. So first of all, intolerance, that too by simply an independent witness without any proof submitted by the witness, is not does not have very high evidentiary value. If we were to, being charitable to the prosecution, if we were to assume that there is a background of intolerance against the government, that intolerance is still not criminalized by any law in India unless it is backed by actions under sedition or under criminal conspiracy or waging of war. And as has been proven, those sections do not apply against the accused in this case.
Kindly appreciate the fact that at one hand, the common friend of the accused is saying that these people were intolerant. On the other side, counterfeit currency note has been recovered from you.
Yes, sir.
On the third side, all the accused person were in contact with each other. And you are not denying to the fact that Mr. Sameer was involved in so and so activity. And particularly when you are admitting the fact that the possession of the counterfeit currency has been recovered, the statement of the witness, you have not disproved the same. So ultimately, taking together all the substantial evidence as well as the circumstantial evidence is going against you. One point I may agree with you, that a particular mens rea need to be proved in a specific, but a part thereof, all the circumstantial and substantive evidence is going against you. So what you have to say on that particular point?
Yes, sir. Looking only at the facts, here are a few submissions. The first one is, again, intolerance has not been criminalized. Even when we look at our case laws surrounding hate speech and incitement of hate, it has been said that even hate speeches are not criminalized as long as they don't lead to violence or some sort of action that has been criminalized by the IPC. Thus, when there is such a high threshold for even high speech, simply hate speech, simply a statement by a witness claiming one of the accused to be intolerant cannot, in good interest of justice, be assumed as proof or conclusive evidentiary proof of their guilt. That is with reference to the independent witness. With reference to the other evidence that is at hand, call detailed records and meetings that show association. Again, association has not been criminalized. The nature of the association, we don't have any proof of what transmission occurred between them. We don't have any call recordings. We don't have any. Yes, sir. We don't have any witness showing an exchange of these activities. We only have them being cited together. These are random tangents of bits and pieces of information here and there, which may create a cogent picture if more facts were brought to hand. But they have not.
And what about the location of the mobile?
Yes, sir. The sightings are not incriminating as well. We understand that Sameer and Monu were together. They were together, namely in 3 states, being Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, and West Bengal. And that is again not criminalizing. It also proves that they were never in touch with with Sohail. It also proves that they never got in touch with Peter. And the call detail records further substantiate the claims of the accused. Thus, we present to you that while there is circumstantial evidence on behalf of prosecution, it does not fulfill the burden of going beyond reasonable doubt. And with that, I would like to end my argumentation with reference to section 123 and section 201 with reference to concealment and disappearance of evidence. Section 123 governs concealment with intent to facilitate, design to wage war. As has been previously proven, Section 121, the accused are not guilty under waging of war. When there is no waging of war, when there is no act therein, there can be no knowledge therein, there cannot be any intent to hide the knowledge or hide that information, and we can again rely on the facts to substantiate the same. Lastly, with reference to Section 201, this is one of the most unsubstantiated, groundless claims made by the prosecution, which claims that there was disappearance of evidence of offense or giving false information to screen offenders. Sameer and Monu, first of all 3 accused, had no reason to believe that there was an offense. They were only carrying out their activities of sensitization, awareness, and skill development. First of all, there was no knowledge or reason to believe the offense, going according to statutory provision language. Secondly, there was no false testimony. There is no testimony of the accused, all 3, which has been disproved by any factual evidence given in the charge sheet itself. Thirdly, Kalu Mama has been accused of this section because of a claim in the charge sheet that he burned Sohail's house. There is no proof, there's no annexure which shows us why. There's no witness that tells us that Sameer was there when the house was burnt. There is no medical proof which shows fingerprints or any bodily association, and it is the most unsubstantiated claim made by the prosecution. And Section 201 definitely does not apply to any of the 3 accused. For these reasons, it is submitted before the court that that the accused are not guilty for any of the sections. If your lordship permits, I shall proceed with the prayer.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, your
Regarding the presence, what the CDR says. The location of mobile location.
Yes, your lordship.
Regarding presence of the accused at the particular place, what is the location of the mobile as per the prosecution?
Which show the locations where they are proven the accused. So the proof that is given, which is of Sameer and Monu being in touch with each other, the respondent admits to that fact. There is also proof of communication between Sameer, Monu, and Kalu Mama that is also granted under their union activities and their activities of sensitization. We also claim that there was no contact with Sohail, and that has been proven by call detail records. And in conclusion, call detail records and
kindly have para 17.6
Yes, your lordship.
of the charge sheet.
There are SIM cards and mobile phones.
17.16. The location of the mobile and the
Yes, sir.
data relevant there too.
Lordship, again, it is presented before the court that some West Bengal and Delhi, which is in the nature of their activities. If you who has been accused of
the location of the accused Kalu was near to the Bangladesh border, and he was in constant touch with the Samir, Monu, and Peter. And thereafter, it was also pointed out and proved by the prosecution that he was in touch with another number, which was later to be identified as the number of Sohail.
Hello.
So, sir says,
Hello.
so there's some internet issue with my co-counsel.
No issue. You may proceed on her behalf. Please.
So, sir, the very question of whether they were, why they were near the border of Bangladesh is the very fact that West Bengal shares border with Bangladesh, and he was the resident of that place. The very fact that he was near the border of Bangladesh does not substantiate, and it is not an evidentiary proof which essentially established that just because he was near the border of Bangladesh, so he
No,
was
no. And
planning
what
any
and what
conspiracy.
about the fact that he was in constant touch with Sohail also?
So, sir, the fact that he was in constant touch with Sohail substantiates the fact that he was working for the purpose of sensitization and for raising awareness regarding the policies of the government so that the rights of the people are upheld. That's the basic, essential reason why they were in contact with Sohail.
Okay.
Your Lordship, may the council proceed with the prayer.
Yeah.
The council would like to conclude with the arguments that in light of the in light of the laws cited, wherefore in light of the issues raised, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, it is humbly prayed before this honorable court to hold Samir, Monu, and Kalumama innocent under the sections of 489B, 489C, Section 17 of UAPA for counterfeit currency, Section 120B and Section 18 of UAPA for criminal conspiracy, Section 15, 16, 20 of UAPA for terrorist activities, Section 121, 123 for waging of war, and Section 201 for disappearance of evidence, and or pass any other order, direction, or relief that this honorable court may deem fit in the interest of justice, equity, and good conscience. For this act of kindness, the respondent shall duty bound forever humbly pray. Thank you.
That's fine. You have done well. Good. Mr.
Thank you,
Courtmaster.
Your Lordship.
Hello. उस वजह से प्रिंटर नहीं जा रहा है आपका.
Yeah, you are audible.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
So the other team has withdrawn, and the defense is the only team. So the judges are requested to please mark this team as the preview group. And with your due permission, we can conclude this session.
Okay, please. And best wishes to you, and good luck ahead.
Thank you for your time, Your Lordship. Have a nice day.
Both of you argued very well, and all the best for your endeavor.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Your
you so
Lordship.
much, Your Lordship. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you.